Come and knock if you dare.
Come and knock if you dare.
Nothing weird here at all.
Nothing weird here at all.
Only marriage for him and her and him. Three's company also. Come and sleep on our floor.
Come and sleep on our floor.
'Cause you might be my bro.
'Cause you might be my bro.
We'll get hits just for our tuition break. Three's company also. Marriage is so much fun again. Now it's done again. True. Down at NDSU.
Down at NDSU.
Three's company also.
Yeah, couldn't be Three's Company too, because we are riddled with lawyers on this program, and we spend almost $25 on that. This is the timeline. I want you to know that what I'm showing you is the timeline according to Ilhan Omar. She has an amazing marriage history, and this is how she tried to explain it. Now, Omar has not answered any questions that keep coming up about her tax fraud, except through a campaign person. So far, it's really unclear what penalties she will face, if any, for the tax law violations. If you were me, we'd already be paying the $100,000 fine and serving the 3 years in prison. But if you're a hijab-wearing congresswoman, the first one in history, well, you get a different rule book, I think. The wildest, weirdest claim that has plagued Omar since she entered politics is that her second husband, Elmi, is actually her biological brother. Okay, let me show you. Allegedly, she married for immigration purposes, we think, or maybe to help Elmi get a student visa and or a student loan and attend North Dakota State University, which is, I mean, who wouldn't break the law to attend that? All right, so let me go through the timeline here. Faith marriage to Hersey. This is her husband here, Hersey. They're dancing, they're so happy, but it's a faith marriage, so I'm not sure the dancing happened yet. But she has a faith marriage, interfaith tradition, which of course is Muslim. So wedding bells, interfaith marriage in 2002. Now they get busy, as most young couples do, and they have a couple of kids. But then things turn out a little sad. Yes, the home that they had built together, with the heart over the door, turns out that they have to have a faith divorce. Now, I don't know how you get a faith divorce, but they got one. So they get a faith divorce. I don't know who kept the faith kids or what happened. But then just a few months later, in 2009, it's marriage bells again. And this time she has a legal marriage to Elmi. And it's a faith marriage too, except this time it's not Islam, it's Christian. She has a Christian minister do the ceremony, even though her husband, her, and her ex-husband are all Muslim. Okay, that's not weird at all, because they honeymoon at college at North Dakota State University. Now, you might ask yourself, yes, but where was their love nest? Well, their love nest is really kind of interesting. Here's the documentation, by the way, of the second marriage here. This is the application. Here's their actual marriage certificate. And where do they live? Well, we have here the document from the university showing that her and her new husband, Elmi, went to school together. But they lived in this house. And they lived in this house while Hersey was living there, and the two kids. So kids, this isn't going to screw you up at all. Mommy's just married a new man, and we're going to live with with mommy's faith partner, along with mommy's legal partner, and you two kids, and we're going to school. Don't worry about it. By the way, here is the documentation. He tried to open up a business where he's stating he lives at this house. By the way, Hersey also is living at this house. So they're all living together. And there's also, I think this is 25 or 26 legal citations where either one of them say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, officer. And by the way, here's my address. So the three of them, it's like Three's Company also. So they're here, and then they go to college, and then in 2011, they graduate. Now, here's what's so sad about this. The same year they graduate, she separates from Elmi. It's another sad, well, these are tough years, college years. Who knows what they were doing? Because they're not Muslim, they were Christians. So they were probably partying like crazy in college, and that put a lot of strain, so they had to separate. So they separate at the same time they graduate from NDSU. But here's what's crazy. Just a month later, she falls in love again with Hersey. Now, I'm not sure if Elmi is also living with Hersey in the love shack. I don't know. We don't know where he goes. We just know they separated, but that doesn't mean he's not living there anymore. Again, we don't know. So a month after she separates, not divorces, separates, she has another faith marriage, a faith remarriage, a Muslim faith remarriage to Hersey. I don't know what happened to her Christian marriage, but kids, learn a lesson. Christians, bad. Muslim marriages work. They last. So she comes back and she has another faith remarriage in 2012. In fact, it's going so well that in 2014, she's filing her taxes from this house, claiming that Hersey, the first husband, is her legal husband, even though her other husband, the second husband, Elmi, is actually the one she's legally married to. Remember, she's separated and only married in faith at this time. But don't worry, it's not confusing at all for the kids, because at this time she has 3 children. They had 2 children back here. Now they have another one. Oh, 5. No, I'm sorry, he's still living there. 6 companies also. All right, now here's the problem. She files the taxes, real tax returns with her faith husband. She probably didn't realize that they were real. They might have been faith tax returns. So in 2014, and then, 2015, I did it again, 2 years in a row. But she might not be concentrating that much on what was happening when she was doing her taxes, because that same year, she went to London. And we have photos. Here she is. Oh my gosh, look at this. And there she is with her separated husband. Now, I don't know what Hersey thought about this, or if he even knew she was going over to London to be with her separated husband. He might have, and the kids probably were crying, so she probably kept that quiet. But were things starting to be rekindled? We don't know. We just know we have pictures of them together in London, which is kind of a problem, because after she wins the Minnesota House seat, she legally divorces Elmi. And in this, here's the document where she's filing for divorce. She says over and over again, I don't know where he is. I haven't seen him since we were in college. Wait a minute. I don't think that's true. So now she legally divorces and then immediately legally marries Hersey. Oh, it's such an old-fashioned couple, isn't it? So she wins the house right after she's legally married and spiritually married, I think, too. The last thing, 2019, the Minnesota State Board nails her for campaign finance violations, which we just showed you. And Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, wow, they get her for all these violations. And then the Minneapolis Star-Tribune confirms a lot of this. And what they can't confirm, which we're going to show you in a minute, the things they can't confirm, this is her timeline. The things they can't confirm, like the picture of the brother, is that really her brother? They say they can't confirm it without her. That's a whole different story. Wait until you hear that story. The possibility that Omar married her biological brother, weird, right? But in a minute you'll see, is it really that far-fetched? New developments on this story that you don't want to miss. Up next, oh, Three's Company doesn't tell the story, but the Brady Bunch does. Except really kind of not. Next. All right. So let's look at the facts. Did Ilhan Omar marry her brother or not? I mean, for a long time, I didn't even want to entertain this story because it's just ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous. But the reporting that continues to come out from online journalists and the Minneapolis Star, the Tribune, even the Tribune say they can't dismiss any of this. They can't disprove what they're saying. In fact, they have confirmed over 50% of all of this that we're about to show you. The fact that Ilhan Omar refuses to comment on any of it beyond hostility or calling people racist or Islamophobes makes one willing to entertain something crazy. People who care about the truth have done enough work here that I believe enough evidence is not there to convict her, but to at least convene a grand jury. I really think we all need to know if this is a series of a few very hard to believe misunderstandings with some photo lookalikes or worse. But the only ones that can answer that, the only one really, is the person refusing to comment or the FBI. And we all know how much the left just loves good old-fashioned FBI investigations. Maybe they should convene one. Let's start at the beginning. Where did this claim originate from? Well, it actually goes back into 2016, just as Omar was set to defeat the longtime incumbent for a seat in the state legislature. A post by a username, Abdi Johnson, surfaced on an internet forum called Somali Spot. Now, Somali Spot is a forum for members of the Somali community to talk about everything from politics to movies. Abdi Johnson's original discussion has now been deleted, but this is a screenshot of the original post. Quote, Ilhan Omar's marriage fraud exposure. The user goes on to explain how Ilhan married her brother to help him get into the United States and lists social media posts to back up his case. Well, local media left it alone. The mainstream media obviously wouldn't touch it. But there are some people in the country that have a lot of time on their hands, and they also are independent journalists as well. I mean, who's looking at an independent, obscure Somali message board? Well, a journalist at Alpha News began to look into the series of conflicting social media posts made by the real-life stars of Three's Company that we just told you about. David Steinberg over at PJ Media also began his digging, and he has just released new information that attempts to put all of the missing pieces in place. You'll have to decide. His new research is based on a source within the Somali community and how that information links Ilhan Omar to a UK citizen that he says is Ilhan's biological brother named Ahmed Nur Saeed Elmi. Now, this is one of the most complicated stories to process that I have seen, and I've seen some complex stories. I mean, we did Acorn and the Tides Foundation, but this will make your head spin. It's basically this. It's the story of a not-so-lovely lady.
Here's the story of Ilhan Elmi, who was living in a camp for refugees. Then she got a brand new name, Ilhan Omar, and fled across the sea.
It's the story of a little Omar, long before she was a member of the squad. She had visas and her big ideas, but there's a thing called fraud. Till the one day when these Elmies met these Omars, and they solved their problem one day over lunch. That this troop of imported Somalis would all fuse their names and form the Omar Bunch. The Omar Bunch. I've got a hunch that there's something screwed up with Omar's bunch.
All right, now I want to take you through, if you're not confused yet, you will be. Let me give you the chalkboard here. This is the current theory, alleged by journalist David Steinberg. It was given to him in part by multiple sources within the Somali community in Minneapolis. And I want to make it really clear There are real deep questions regarding how the Omars entered the country. This isn't the real story. Then I don't know what is. You can't blame Ilhan Omar. I should say, I'm not blaming Ilhan Omar, what she did as a young, I think 8-year-old daughter of a man that might have been just trying to get his family out of a horrible refugee camp. But all of what I'm about to lay out is important so you understand the overall story. In 2008, the State Department stopped accepting asylum applications from refugees that claimed that they had family members here already in the U.S. Why? Because DNA testing showed that 87% of the refugees claiming asylum from Africa were actually fraudulently claiming that they had family members current in the U.S. From the early 90s up until 2008, immigration fraud was of this manner was just everywhere. It was rampant. In 1995, there were 2 families in Somalia that actually had traveled to Kenya to a refugee camp. And I think it's much more than a hunch. If someone was denied entry in the United States, they could accomplish a lot more as a bunch. And this is allegedly what happened here. It looks like this. We're going to concentrate on the Omar family and the Elmi family. The Omars were headed by 2 men. These 2, Abdullahi or whatever, and Ahmed. There's a lot of Ahmeds in this story. They had been granted asylum and were going to live in Arlington, Virginia in 1995. However, the Elmis had not been granted asylum in the United States, and they included these people. This is the father, the sisters, and the 2 brothers. Okay? Now here's where it starts to get confusing. Layla, Mohammed, and Ahmed, they got sent over to the asylum that was granted to them in the UK. And so if we were going to put it onto a TV show, it'd be like upstairs, downstairs, but mainly downstairs. So they go over to the United Kingdom. Now, these 2 were going to Hollywood, USA, otherwise known as Virginia, and they're the Omars. Now, that leaves these 3. So these 3, Layla, Mohammed, and, Noor, Sarah, and Ilhan, they go, where? Well, they changed their name to Omar in order to slip in with the family that had already been granted asylum. This is the theory. All right. Ilhan Elmi was now known as Ilhan Omar. And that's the way they all became the Omar bunch. But that's a big claim. Is there anything outside of official documents that ties these 2 families together? Well, Ilhan and Sarah both identify their dad. Here's Ilhan and Sarah. They both identify their dad as Noor Saeed Elmi. That's not disputed by anyone. Here is Ilhan's sister calling Noor her father and dad on Facebook. And there you see him. Now, Dad actually has his own Facebook page where he identifies himself simply as Noor Saeed. Notice neither the Omar or Elmi family name is included. Layla is listed just as one of his friends. Well, Layla's page is currently down, but the URL shows her name as Layla Elmi. David Steinberg received certified copy of Layla's marriage certificate in the UK that lists Noor Saeed Elmi as her father. And in 2011, Ilhan Omar posted this picture to Instagram. That's Dad in the middle and Layla on the left and Ilhan on the right. Layla calls Dad Noor Saeed Elmi. Ilhan calls Dad Noor Saeed Omar. Well, that's not confusing at all. Here's what we need to know. Is this Noor Saeed Elmi or Noor Saeed Omar? Well, we have a picture of the guy, Omar and Saeed, and is that guy. So when the researchers went to find Noor Elmi in the UK, there were no matches for that name. So where is Layla's dad? Is this him? Okay, you could back up and say, well, wait a minute. That's Omar and Layla, but that doesn't mean that Layla and Ilhan are sisters. I mean, you know, they're not sisters. The dad's names are just, okay. Unless you know what happened in 2016. In 2016, Ilhan Omar stated that she was harassed by a cab driver in Washington, D.C. She claimed that the cabbie called her ISIS and tried to take her hijab off. Well, a reporter from the Star Tribune saw a copy of the filed complaint. It stated that she was with her sister at the time of the event. All right, well, she's got a sister. She's got Sarah. Ilhan Omar said her sister attended a dinner with a man that hosts social events for the Somali American community. Now, upon hearing from Ilhan what had happened, he, of course, went straight to Facebook. He stated, and I quote, "On Wednesday night, I had an opportunity to have dinner with State Representative-elect Ilhan Omar and her lovely sis, Layla Elmi." He even links to Layla's Facebook page. I showed you earlier this page. It is currently now unavailable. Now, all of this certainly gives the appearance that Ilhan and Layla seem to think that they have the same dad, and his real name is Elmi, and that they are sisters. But what about the would-be husband or brother? As I showed you before, the theory says that Ahmed moved to the UK with his sister and brother after being given asylum in 1995. Now, we know for a fact that they both lived in the same suburb of London. All right, so you got them in the same town. Layla listed Camden as her residence on her marriage certificate. Ahmed listed his primary and secondary school as Haverstock, which is in Camden. Okay. David Steinberg has revealed now that officials at Haverstock show that Ahmed lived at the same address as Layla. Now that seems to fit the theory. Ahmed was a lot younger than Layla. She would have assumed guardianship as a kinship care case. All right, so she kind of would have been mom. Well, in several Instagram posts, Ahmed and Layla call each other mom and son. In 2013, Ahmed posted this picture of Layla's two daughters holding a book back from the primary school in Camden. He said, quote, "These girls rock my world, #nieces." Ilhan Omar actually interacted with the post and liked it. But just 2 years later, Ilhan and Omar took a trip to London. She posted these photos to an Instagram calling what appears to be the same girls, her nieces. So to recap, all the Elmi family members that allegedly split in '95 have not only remained in touch, but they still claim to be family on social media. And even though Ilhan Omar denies this in public statements, why does the evidence seem to overwhelmingly suggest otherwise on Facebook and Instagram? As it stands right now, the theory that began on a Somali blog site that was later expanded upon by independent journalists makes more sense than Omar's weak denial and ever since then complete radio silence. Yesterday, The Blaze reached out to Ilhan Omar for a statement. She would not give us or anyone else an answer, nor will she sit for an interview.
Congresswoman, would you like to clear up any of the confusion or set the record straight on the allegations of tax fraud or immigration fraud related to your two marriages?
All right. If any of this is true, marrying her brother for a visa to come to school here is fraud of the system, a fraud of the university, a fraud of the voters that put her in office. However, it is her possible perjury under oath and taxes that are very, very clear. It's important for America to know who our representatives really are. It's perhaps more important that we know who these people really are when they're coming from devastated lands like Somalia. I remind you that the Nazarene Fund really wasn't bringing in any Christians at all into the United States because the vetting process was said to be below U.S. standards. Well, I don't know what's happened to the standards since, but at that time you couldn't get them any lower. America not only needs to know who their representatives are, but we also need to know who our new citizens are. And when it comes to those public servants, if they aren't who they say they are, if they are hiding anything, they could be blackmailed at best. They may be under the influence of others, organizations like, let's say, CARE or the Muslim Brotherhood, which, by the way, we have ample evidence that she is deeply in bed with. We also have ample evidence that CARE, an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation, is run by the Muslim Brotherhood and whose sister organization is Hamas. Do you think Americans should know who this is? Why is she refusing to answer any questions at all on what appears to be clear felonies? Why the cloak and dagger over Ahmed Elmi? Where is he? Was there any fraud perpetrated in order to gain an American education? These are answers, at the very least, she owes the citizens of Minnesota, but also, maybe more importantly, the voters she claims to represent and the system she claims to represent all over the country. One last question. It's one that I asked myself this morning. If this is such a big deal, where's the Attorney General? The state of Minnesota should be going after her. Where's the Attorney General? Might I perhaps answer that question with 4 simple words? Attorney General Keith Ellison.